Hey, welcome back, everybody, to College Football Red Zone, where we take a holistic look at all 138 FBS programs. And what we will end up doing, as have we done for many of the other teams that we've covered so far, is I'm going to give you that holistic look of the roster, and then I'm also going to give you that record prediction going into a brand new season of college football. So, very excited to get into this one as we're talking about the number 66 ranked team in college football, and for me, that is going to be the UNLV Rebels. Possibly my pick to win the Mountain West here in 2026. So can't wait to talk about them. Hopefully, you enjoy this breakdown once again. If you do, make sure you go ahead, hit that like button, and hit that subscribe button as well. If you do happen to be brand new to the channel, and so let's go ahead and get into it, right? This was a team that was certainly known for its offense, like in the first year of Dan Mullen's tutelage. And Dan Mullen had a very successful regular season before losing both the Mountain West title game as well as losing their bowl game to the Ohio Bobcats during bowl season last year. So did drop their last couple of games, but it was still a really amazing regular season for this Rebels football team. And you look at this squad holistically, at least on the offensive side of the ball, and you can see an offense that absolutely could be overwhelming this upcoming year. With even though they lose Anthony Colandrea to the Nebraska Cornhuskers, and he was extremely productive at UNLV last year, over 4,000 yards and 33 touchdowns as well. They do come back with a Jackson Arnold, who is a former five-star recruit, has had some starting experience at Oklahoma as well as Auburn, hasn't lived up to that five-star experience, but he's a solid quarterback, and he enters a situation where Dan Mullen certainly knows how to coach a really quality offensive unit, and at the same time, he's going to a lower level. So there's a real opportunity here for Jackson Arnold to thrive. I'm not necessarily giving up on him, but really the key to all of this, even before I mention anything else, is really Jackson Arnold at the end of the day. Because if Jackson Arnold ends up being a flop, which I don't think he's going to be, but if he ends up being a flop, this is going to be a wildly disappointing season for Rebels football in 2026. But he is going to have the offensive pieces back in order to make sure that that doesn't happen necessarily, at least to the point where Jackson Arnold is not going to have to do everything, because Jaden Thomas is going to be back, all first team, all conference running back for the Rebels last year. Was one of the best running backs in the Mountain West, and therefore one of the better running backs in the G6 last year. We were able to retain Jaden Thomas for this upcoming season. So that is a really good add as well. And another thing as well on top of that is the trench play for UNLV, at least on the offensive side of the ball, should be pretty good. It's anchored by Austin Boyd. Austin Boyd was a third team All Mountain West offensive tackle last year. He's back as well and playing in this starting lineup to go with it as well. So all things considered, you look at this offensive team, and this offensive team can really make something shake here in the 2026 campaign. I genuinely believe that from the bottom of my heart. Now, what held them back a little bit last year was they were very inconsistent defensively, and that's putting it extremely nicely for how things went last year. And that is where I have a little bit of pause in terms of the ceiling ultimately being, well, can they make it to the playoff? Is playoff a possibility? I'm not going so far as saying that they're a playoff favorite, because I do have some concerns still on the defensive side of the ball. They lost a couple of really nice players. Tumis Adelaide, the interior defensive lineman from Syracuse, ends up, or not, he wasn't from Syracuse. He transferred to Syracuse. 7.5 TFL, 6 sacks in the 2025 campaign. Was a bright spot on what was a defense that did struggle mightily at times, so he is no longer around with the program. They also lose Andrew Powdrell on the back end as well. He transfers to West Virginia. What did a nice job in terms of being one of the better tacklers on this team from a defensive backfield perspective. Had 63 tackles last year for the Rebels before transferring all the way across the country to play in Morgantown to join Rich Rodriguez. Now, it wasn't a completely completely a dud in terms of defensive additions. I really am intrigued by the Avery Helm addition coming in from TCU. Hasn't played very much in his college career, but he's a former four-star recruit. So you do at least have that option to where if Avery Helm finally lives up to that four-star tutelage that he had coming out of high school per 247 Sports, you're looking at this team holistically as, at least on the back end, it's about the same you got on the back end. It, and also on top of that, you get someone that could potentially be an upgrade. But I do certainly am a little concerned about the defensive line, how that's going to look like going into this season. But Dan Mullen is one of the more established coaches in college football. He's been around for a very long time. And you really look at Dan Mullen compared to the other conference coaches in the Mountain West. He's certainly one of the better coaches in this conference, at least bare minimum in the top half. I would comfortably pick him over several coaches that are considered the headman for UNLV football moving forward. So let's go ahead and get into the schedule. And the good news about this schedule for UNLV is that all of these games that they have on their schedule is winnable. There is not a single game on here where there you look at and there's absolutely no shot that they can't win. Now, if Jackson Arnold does end up going ahead and being a massive disappointment, then I think that there is a floor that is in place where UNLV is going to struggle to make it to a bowl game, and they're going to essentially need those last 5 games of the year to go on a strong run, and to go on that strong run just to make it to a bowl game. But realistically, they could win every single one of these games. Now, they do have a couple of games of note that I definitely want to point out, and both of them are at home as well. Memphis at home, for example, is a really important one to work with, right? Because Memphis is supposed to be one of the better teams in the American this year, and UNLV is going to be represented as one of the better teams in the Mountain West. So right there, to open your season, week 0 game, by the way, you're talking about a measuring stick game between Memphis and UNLV from the get go, right? So, not only that, you do also have Cal, and Cal is going into your building. They're coming with a brand new coaching staff, and Cal is kind of in the same situation as UNLV as well, where you know that offense is going to be really good, but the defense is certainly going to come in with some questions this upcoming season, in spite of having a defensive minded head coach in Tosh Wapoy, which I think Wapoy is going to turn things around and put Cal on a higher pedestal eventually. I just think he might need a year or two to get him beyond to what you would typically see from a Justin Wilcox type of season. So that Cal game is certainly fascinating to me. But a couple more games that I wanted to point out on this schedule as well is you got the whole Hawaii game on the road. That's a game that's happening very early in the season, and that could be a game that have massive Mountain West implications at the end of the season. You also have Air Force on the road as well. Air Force is gonna have that elevation to its advantage, and I think Air Force could be a real dark horse team to really make some noise in this upcoming season. And then you also have New Mexico on the road as well. New Mexico also getting talked about as a potential contender to win this Mountain West this year, as part of this group of 4 to 5 teams that I think could realistically win this conference at the end of the season. So, all that being said, how I think things are going to shake out, I do think that they win every single game on this schedule, with the exception of the Cal game. I think Cal just has a little bit too much offensively for UNLV to be able to keep up. I think it's going to be like a really high scoring shootout type of game, which is one of those games that's going to be extraordinarily fun to watch. And listen, if they can get to the NIL game very relatively unscathed, then oh my goodness, this second half of the schedule lines up really nicely. Northern Illinois, Wyoming, at San Jose, and Nevada. I mean, those are teams that are going to be in the bottom half of the Mountain West. So, you get out of your first 6 to 7 games, and you're sitting at either like a 6-1 or at the bare minimum of 5-2. Then you could really make a run in terms of getting some consideration for the playoff, depending on what happens elsewhere in the country at that point. But that's going to wrap things up for this first look of UNLV, where again they do check in at number 66, and they will have an 11-1 record overall. I think UNLV is set for a pretty special season, but I'm definitely curious to hear your thoughts as well. Am I a little too high on this UNLV team? Am I a little bit too low? Definitely let me know down in the comment section down below. And before we sign off tonight, I definitely wanted to go ahead and get into these, I guess, like the spring rankings that I ultimately do have for the Mountain West this upcoming season. So this is how it ended up shaking out in terms of what my spring rankings do end up being for this Mountain West this upcoming season. And I will say this, UNLV is a favorite for me, but again, I think there is four teams that is a legitimate shot to win this conference, and I think Air Force might be on that tiering as a kind of long shot dark horse, but I think Air Force, if things bounce their way, they could find their way to the conference championship as well under Tony Calhoun's tutelage. And then you have a very clear cut bottom half of this conference, starting with Wyoming and working your way down to the two new newcomers in Northern Illinois and UTEP. So how I think it's going to turn out is I think UNLV is going to be hosting that conference championship against the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. And because UNLV has that head to head over Hawaii in the regular season, the Rebels will be hosting the conference championship in their home stadium. And they beat Hawaii a second time to win that Mountain West title. So that's how it works. But hey, for right now, this is Jake from College Football Red Zone signing off. Hoping you guys are all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.